Something is happening to you that everyone around you will misread, not as growth, as damage. You have felt it for weeks, maybe a year. The unfamiliar quiet where the noise used to be, the distance in conversations that once absorbed you, the phone on the table you no longer lunge for, names on the screen that produce neither excitement nor dread, only a neutral clarity you have no language for. You have stopped rehearsing arguments in the shower, stopped composing messages you were never going to send. Entire hours pass now where the running commentary that narrated your life has, without your permission, gone still. You have started to wonder if something is wrong with you. That is what makes it so hard to trust, because the people closest to you are already naming it in ways that will make you doubt yourself. They will say you have become distant. They will say they miss the old you. They will say it with love, with concern, in the tone that used to move you instantly, and you have noticed it no longer does. You register the ache, and a deeper part of you quietly declines to translate it into the old apology, the old accommodation. Something in you has stopped complying, and you do not know whether you are becoming something or losing something. That confusion is exactly what Carl Jung mapped 100 years ago in patients who arrived believing they were falling apart when they were, for the first time, being assembled. Read that line with new weight. Jung did not say it was comfortable, or that it looked like arrival from the outside, or felt like triumph from within. He called it a privilege because he knew most would decline it. They declined precisely because the early signs of becoming look from every angle like something has gone wrong. The mask built to survive is losing structural integrity. The real self is beginning to take load, and in that transfer, the whole structure feels less certain than when it rested entirely on the illusion. Here is what almost no one will tell you, because the culture has no economic use for the language. The system around you is built to reward the mask and punish the emergence. Employers pay the mask, social circles formed around it, family patterns require it. Entire industries would collapse if adults stopped needing what the mask needed to feel real. So the culture has quietly evolved 1,000 mechanisms to make emergence feel like illness, dysfunction, or failure. The right words were never marketed to you. Jung wrote some of them, and they were filed away where they could not disturb the machinery. By the end of this, you will have language for what is happening inside you. You will understand why the behaviors that feel like withdrawal are the first structural evidence of arrival, why the reactions of those around you are almost never about you, and near the end, the one distinction that separates the person who completes this transition from the one who panics in the middle and retreats to the mask for another decade. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a load bearing in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. The quiet withdrawal. The first structural evidence, and the one you will notice before anything else, is a specific quality of withdrawal that does not feel like the withdrawals you have known before. This is not the withdrawal of depression, where the world dulls and you cannot access energy for anything. This is not the withdrawal of anger, where you have pulled back specifically to punish someone. This is something else. This is a withdrawal that has no explanation you can articulate, and no target you can name, and no timeline you can describe. It is simply that you have less to give to certain rooms, and the less having is not a decision you made. It is a fact you are noticing. Consider the exact texture. You used to be the one who initiated. In group chats, in friendships, in family dynamics, you were the initiator, the maintainer, the one who kept the currents flowing. And then, at some point in the recent past, you noticed that you had stopped initiating. Not because you decided to stop, you just did. Messages you would have sent a year ago sit in your head and dissolve. Invitations you would have extended pass by without extension. Check-ins that used to feel like natural rhythm now feel like effort you cannot summon. And here is the part that produces the specific confusion. You are not upset with these people. You do not have grievances. There is no crisis. You simply do not have the same automatic reflex to close the distance, and you are noticing that the distance, when unclosed, does not produce in you the ache it used to produce. Jung would recognize this immediately. What is happening is that your energy, which for decades has been flowing outward in the specific pattern required to maintain the mask, has begun to reverse direction, not permanently, not entirely, but enough that the outward flow has thinned, and the thinning is what you are feeling. You have less to give, not because you are depleted, but because your system has quietly recognized that most of what was being given was not being reciprocated with the actual currency the real self requires. And a self that is beginning to emerge does not tolerate the same imbalances the mask tolerated for decades. The imbalances that used to feel like normal life now feel subtly like leaks. And your system, without asking you, has begun to close the leaks. The people who benefited from the leaks are noticing. Some of them cannot articulate what they are noticing, but they feel it. And this is where the misreading begins. They will interpret your reduced initiation as coldness. They will interpret your unavailability as rejection. They will feel correctly that something has changed, and they will feel incorrectly that the change is about them personally. It is not about them. It is about a system inside you that has finally stopped subsidizing arrangements that were never designed to sustain the person you actually are. You are not becoming colder. You are becoming honest in a specific structural way that shows up as reduced flow before it shows up as anything else. And the reduced flow is one of the earliest and most reliable signs that the transfer has begun. The second sign is more interior, and you will have noticed it only in specific moments because it hides under ordinary experience. You have begun to notice a specific quality of attention inside you that watches your own reactions from a small distance you did not used to have. When someone says something that would have detonated you a year ago, you notice yourself feeling the initial charge. And then, at the same time, you notice yourself noticing the charge. There is a small gap between the reaction and the identification with the reaction, and in that gap, something new has become possible. You can now choose, sometimes, whether to move with the charge or let it pass through you. This choice was not available to you 2 years ago. You did not know it existed, and now that it exists, you cannot unknow it, and it is beginning to restructure everything. This is what Jung called the emergence of the observing ego. Though the term is drier than the experience is more specific. It is the moment you realize that a lifetime of emotional automaticity has begun to acquire a small, calm witness. The witness does not judge. The witness does not silence the emotions. The witness simply is there, next to the emotion, watching. And the presence of the witness is enough to change everything because for the first time, you are not being lived by your reactions. You are, in small but growing ways, in relationship to your reactions. That relationship is the exact substrate on which a real self is built. Without it, no matter how much you understand about yourself intellectually, you are still being run by the same machinery. With it, even a small amount of it, everything begins to shift. The specific texture of this in daily life is quiet. You are in a conversation. Someone says the thing that used to hurt you. You feel the old hurt begin. You also feel, for the first time, a small point of stillness inside you that is not hurting. The point of stillness observes the hurt. It does not deny it. It does not amplify it. It simply witnesses it. And a few seconds later, you notice that the hurt has moved through you without organizing your response in the way it used to organize your response. You did not react from the wound. You responded from the observer. And the response, whatever it was, felt for the first time like it came from you and not from the accumulated conditioning of the mask. This is a small event when it happens. It is also structurally an enormous event. Because the emergence of the observer is the first infrastructure of individuation, everything else that becomes possible in this process becomes possible because of this development. Without the observer, there is no path. With the observer, however dim at first, the path begins. Here is a sign that will be strange, and I want you to notice its strangeness because the strangeness is part of the signature. You have begun to notice a specific relationship to time that you did not have before. Events that used to feel urgent no longer feel urgent, and events that used to feel unimportant have begun to occupy more of your attention than they should, by any reasonable accounting. Small things, the quality of light in a room, the specific weight of a mug in your hand, a short conversation with a stranger that you would have forgotten within the hour a year ago now stays with you for days. And meanwhile, large things, promotions, social invitations, arguments, milestones that would have consumed your interior for weeks, now pass through you at a pace that surprises you. This is not distraction. This is not dissociation. This is a reordering of what your system is treating as significant. The mask had a specific hierarchy of significance built around what would earn approval, avoid punishment, maintain position, and preserve the specific relational network the mask depended on. That hierarchy is quietly dissolving, and in its place, a different hierarchy is beginning to emerge. One whose logic you cannot yet articulate, but whose signals you are beginning to trust. Your system is starting to weight things according to a different measure, and the different measure does not always match what your culture, your family, your peer group weights. This produces a specific loneliness that is unusual because it is not the loneliness of being rejected. It is the loneliness of caring quietly about things that the people around you cannot see the point of, and no longer caring with the same intensity about things that the people around you consider the most important things in life. You will not always be able to explain this to yourself, let alone to others. That is part of the process. The mask could always explain itself because the mask had absorbed the entire vocabulary of the culture. The emergence in its early stages is often mute. It knows what it knows without yet knowing how to say it. And this muteness is one of the specific reasons the process is difficult to trust from the inside. You are being asked to trust movements in yourself for which you do not yet have language. That trust is the leap. Most people do not take it. They wait for the language first. And because the language never fully arrives on the culture's terms, they conclude that the movements themselves must be wrong, and they retreat back to the mask, which at least had a full vocabulary. Do not do this. The language will come. It comes later. What comes first is the reordering, and the reordering is the evidence, not a symptom. The fourth sign, and this one begins to explain many of the smaller irritations you have been carrying without being able to name them. You have become, in the last year or so, unusually sensitive to falseness in a specific way, not the ordinary detection of dishonesty, which most adults have, something finer. You can now feel in your own body the exact micro-moment when a person shifts from something authentic to something performed. You can hear it in a tone of voice. You can see it in the way someone's posture changes when a specific topic enters the room. You can feel it in your own chest when a conversation crosses over from real to constructed. And you have noticed in the last year that certain conversations, certain rooms, certain relationships now produce in you a specific low-grade discomfort you did not use to feel, because your system is now detecting the falseness in them, and the detection is intolerable in a way that the same falseness, undetected, used to be perfectly livable. This is why old friendships have started to feel wrong to you, sometimes without any incident to point to. The friendships have not changed. The falseness that was always present in them has not increased. What has changed is your capacity to feel it. And once the capacity is online, you cannot switch it off. The mask for years was compatible with the low-level performative quality of many of your relationships. The emerging self is not. The emerging self can only tolerate a specific density of authenticity in a room, and rooms that fall below that density now produce a specific fatigue that you cannot rest away, because rest is not what the fatigue requires. What the fatigue requires is either a change in the room or a change in your presence in the room. And you are quietly, without full permission, beginning to make one or the other of those changes in dozens of small ways you have not yet consciously tracked. Here is where the shame cycles in, and I want to address it directly. Part of you feels guilty for this. Part of you wonders whether you have become judgmental, whether you are now the kind of person who finds fault where none exists, whether your standards have quietly become impossible. Set this guilt down. What you are experiencing is not the elevation of standards. It is the return of accuracy. For most of your life, you were required to override your accurate perception of relational dishonesty in order to remain in relationships that required the override. The override has ended. The perception has not become sharper. The permission to perceive has been restored. And restored perception, after decades of suppression, feels like a new phenomenon. But it is actually a return to the original instrument you were before the world taught you to dull it. You are not becoming difficult. You are becoming accurate. And accuracy, in a culture built on comfortable falseness, will always feel initially like too much. It is not too much. It is the correct amount, finally. Now stop, because we are at the specific turn where most content on this topic goes wrong. Most content on becoming your true self treats the process as a series of positive milestones. You are more authentic, you are more confident, you are more centered. These framings are not exactly wrong, but they are dangerously incomplete. And the incompleteness is why almost no one who consumes this kind of content actually goes through with the process, even when they resonate with every word of it. Here is the reversal. The becoming of the true self is not primarily an experience of becoming more. It is primarily an experience of becoming less. Less driven by the reflexes that used to run you. Less available for the emotional labor you used to perform automatically. Less compelled by the approval you used to require. Less identified with the story you used to tell about yourself. Less afraid of the outcomes you used to organize your life around avoiding, less certain of the identity you used to defend with such energy. The becoming is subtractive before it is additive. And the subtractive stage is the one everyone quits because subtraction, in a culture obsessed with acquisition, does not feel like arrival. It feels like disappearance. This is the specific psychological gauntlet Jung understood. He watched patients undergo the subtractive phase and interpret their own disappearance as pathology. He watched them come to him, convinced they were breaking down. And he watched them, when they were able to hold on, come out the other side with a specific density of self that they could not have carried before the subtraction. The subtraction had been the necessary preparation. It had cleared the space. And the space it cleared was the exact space in which the real self, previously unable to fit, could finally take up residence. The people who quit the process quit during the clearing. They interpreted the empty room as loss and rushed to fill it with anything, another relationship, another identity, another mask, before the real occupant could arrive. And so they never met themselves. They filled the room too quickly. The real self came knocking and found the door already occupied. Not everyone can hear this. Notice that you can. Notice that something in you has been waiting to be told, specifically, that the disappearance is the arrival, that the emptying is the filling, that the strange grayness of this phase is not evidence of failure, but of the exact structural change that individuation actually feels like from the inside. Almost no one is told this clearly. You are being told it now. Hold it. Because when the next wave of the process hits, and it will, you will need this line to keep you from filling the room too soon. Now the sign that will be hardest to sit with, and the one that produces the most confusion, because it involves the people you love. The people who knew the mask are, without conscious intent, aligned with the continued existence of the mask. This is not because they are bad, it is because relationships over years form specific patterns, and every pattern depends on both parties continuing to play their roles. When one party begins to change roles, the pattern is threatened, and the other party feels the threat before they understand what is happening. Their response to the threat is often to attempt in various small ways to restore the pattern. They will do this in ways that do not look like restoration. They will express concern. They will ask if you are okay. They will note that you seem different. They will bring up memories of when you were more available, more warm, more like yourself. They will use the word yourself, and they will mean the mask. Because for them, the mask was you. They never met the person underneath. They fell in love with, befriended, married, worked with the specific performance you built to be tolerable. And the emergence of the person underneath is, from their perspective, the disappearance of the person they knew. They are not wrong to grieve that disappearance. They are only wrong to interpret the disappearance as a problem to be solved by returning you to the earlier state. You cannot return. This is the specific hardness of this phase. You cannot go back to the mask because the mask has already lost its structural integrity, and returning to it now would only produce a poorer version of the performance, one visibly cracked, one no longer able to sustain the very people it used to serve. The only direction is forward. And forward involves, at some point, the specific difficult conversations or the specific difficult silences in which certain people in your life adjust to the fact that the person they are relating to now is not the person they were relating to 5 years ago. Some will adjust, some will not. And the ones who do not will drift. And the drift will hurt. And the hurt will be real, and it will also be survivable. Because the alternative, remaining the mask to keep them comfortable, is a slower and more total loss than any drift they could produce. Here is the specific reframe you need for this. The people who cannot love the emerging self were not, strictly speaking, loving you. They were loving a role you played. This is not an indictment of them. It is a structural fact of what the relationship actually was. And the emerging self, for all its early awkwardness and grayness, is the only version of you that any real relationship can be built with, because the mask was never actually available for real relationship. It was only available for performance. The relationships that survive your becoming are the ones that can eventually be real. The ones that do not survive were never going to be real in the first place. The becoming is not destroying your relationships. It is separating the ones that had real ground from the ones that only had performative ground. That separation is painful. It is also, in a way you may not yet feel but will eventually feel, one of the greatest gifts the process gives you, because a life built around a small number of real relationships is a fundamentally different life than a life built around a large number of performative ones. And the difference is not marginal. The difference is total. Now the deeper cut, because you have earned it. Because most of what I have said so far, if you paid careful attention, has framed this process as something happening inside you, with the outside world as a kind of context. That framing is useful, but incomplete. And the incompleteness is what produces the specific spiritual materialism that ruins many attempted individuations. Here is the second reversal. The true self is not a hidden object inside you that you are gradually uncovering. That framing is a useful metaphor for the early stages, but it becomes a trap in the later stages, because the true self is not a static thing beneath the mask. The true self is a specific quality of relationship, a relationship between the many parts of you and the world around you, conducted from a center that is no longer identified with any single role, mask, or fixed identity. This is what Jung meant when he pointed toward the self with a capital letter, and he was explicit that this self was not equivalent to the personal self, the ego, the mask, or even the shadow. The self was the entire system in honest relationship with itself. It was not a location, it was a functioning, which means the goal of this process is not to strip away the mask and find the real face. The goal is to become the one who can wear the mask when it is useful, take it off when it is not, visit the shadow without becoming lost there, meet the world without losing yourself in it, and lose yourself in the world when losing yourself is what a specific moment requires, all without ever collapsing back into any single one of these states as your permanent identity. The true self is not a thing. It is a flexibility. It is a specific structural capacity to move between the parts of yourself without any single part running the whole system. This capacity is what Jung called individuation, and it is not a destination. It is a way of being that keeps deepening for the rest of your life. This changes what you are looking for in your own experience. You are not looking for the moment you become authentic. You are looking for the moment you notice that you are no longer identified with any of your identifications. That moment is subtle. It does not feel like triumph. It feels like a specific spaciousness inside your own life. You have preferences without being your preferences. You have opinions without being your opinions. You have roles without being your roles. And this spaciousness is what makes the specific quality of presence that other people cannot name but can feel around you, the specific gravity that Jung's self carries in every account of it, from every tradition that has ever tried to describe it. It is not that the individuated person has become more themselves. It is that they have become less identified with the specific thing they used to think of as themselves. And this unidentification is the exact thing that produces the appearance of depth. You are on the road to this, not at the end of it. Almost no one is at the end of it, and the ones who talk as if they are at the end of it are usually still very much in the middle. But the direction you are moving in is the correct direction. And the strangeness of this phase, the withdrawal, the observer, the sensitivity, the subtraction, the response of the old network, all of it, is the exact terrain that this direction runs through. You are not off the path. You are on it. The path just does not look from the inside like the culture promised the path would look. Which is fine, because the culture never actually knew what it was talking about with respect to this path. Only the people who have walked it know, and they mostly do not write bestsellers about it, because the language required to describe it does not sell well. It sells slowly. It sells to the exact people who need it. That is one of the reasons you found this, not because the algorithm chose you, because your specific stage of the process chose the content that matches your specific stage of the process. That is how it usually works, though almost no one names it out loud. Before we close, imagine 1 year forward. You wake in the same body, in the same room, but something structural has settled inside you. The gray phase you have been in is beginning to organize into something else. The subtraction has slowed. The room that was cleared out is beginning, quietly, to fill, but not with the old contents. It is filling with specific responses, specific preferences, specific ways of being that feel, unmistakably, like they came from you rather than from the world's pressure on you. You are not louder than you were. You are not more visible. You are simply more present in your own life. The people who could adjust to the emerging you have adjusted, and the relationships you have with them now carry a specific weight that no relationship in your life carried a year ago. The people who could not adjust have drifted, and the drift, which used to feel unbearable to anticipate, has turned out to be, in retrospect, a specific mercy for both parties. You do not think about them constantly. You do not need to. Your interior no longer has the constant background hum of managing their perception of you, and the silence of that hum, once you noticed it, turned out to be the specific silence you had been searching for your entire adult life without knowing you were searching for it. You still have all the same features. Your work is the same, or somewhat different. Your address is the same, or somewhat different. Externally, not much has changed that a stranger would notice. Internally, everything has changed. The mask is still available to you when you need it, and you use it when you need it, but you no longer confuse it with your face. The observer is now steady enough that most of your reactions pass through it before organizing your responses. The sensitivity to falseness has not decreased, but you have built enough sovereignty around it that it no longer produces the specific fatigue it used to produce. You are no longer negotiating with your own accurate perception. You are simply using it. This is the specific quiet arrival that Jung was describing, and it is available to you not as a future event, but as a direction that gets closer with each act of not filling the empty room prematurely. If this reached the part of you that has been quietly enduring this phase without adequate language for it, subscribe, not because I asked, because you understand now that the work of moving through this transition is not the work of a single video. It is the work of years, and it requires a room where the work is taken seriously without being simplified into either false optimism or clinical pathologizing. This is that room. What you have heard is one layer. There is deeper work on shadow integration, deeper work on the specific mechanics of holding the empty room without rushing to fill it, deeper work on the strategic detachment that makes individuation actually possible in a culture that is designed to prevent it. Stay in the room, and whatever you do, don't stop now. The on-screen video matters more than you think. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.